This is Dissociated.
Like, I'm dissociating now, and I wanted to answer the question.
You can answer it.
Oh no,
Again,
somebody else here. So.
Oh, no problem.
A lot of people see her as the face of dissociative identity disorder, DID, or at least that's what most of her audience insists on calling her, giving her the title of an official spokesperson or leader of it all, which unfortunately seems to have already become an undeniable fact at this point. And if you're active on TikTok or YouTube, you'd have probably seen she's made videos covering just about every possible aspect of the disorder, probably even more than an actual specialist in the field on the same platform has managed to put out. So ablaze, does that mean she therefore can't be faking? Have you watched one of these videos, guys? Do you know what's about to happen? But look, while I don't think it's that clear cut to answer, especially looking back at the last time I covered her on my channel, we really dug into some of the horrible things she's done in her past. Because in the last video, we covered her stealing altars and bullying people in the DID community, to just openly encouraging self-diagnosis, while her story about the disorder seems to change every time she talks about it, all of which highlights just how problematic this is. So, having a bit of suspicion about this system, in my opinion, honestly, a reasonable and valid response. But before we get into it, let's get this video seen. If you guys can leave a comment down below saying hello, I'll reply to every one of your comments. Plus, it will help the algorithm push this video, and I would seriously appreciate that.
I'm a trauma holder. I dealt with it badly, not anywhere near as destructively as a lot of other people in the system. And now people on the internet have called me class clown, the person who'll play playful tricks. There's a lot of back and forth and banter between me and Kaya that's often shown publicly because we're usually relatively close to each other in the front.
That's my character. I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring. And then I start eating garbage.
That's a real hot album, homie. I wonder who wrote it. Oh shit.
I'm probably the person who fronts next most often, other than like a small group of littles, to Kaya, you know.
Hello everybody, my name is Chloe and this is another video by Dissociated. Hello everybody, my name is Sally.
Hello, my name's Nadia. It's nice to meet you.
No. Hi, so my name is Nina. Good evening everybody. My name is Jade. I have already done 2 videos on this channel. Well, this is the most stupid thing I've had to do in a while. You do realise this is literally just talking to a camera, right? This is stupid. This is so stupid. I feel like an idiot. Hello, my name is Ruby. I am an ex-persecutor turned protector of the system. The dissociated system, apparently, as we're now called. Just a stupid name.
In this video she uploaded yesterday, Meet Mermaid Altar, a non-human altar. And the thing that I always have a big issue with when it comes to this certain type of content is the fact that in this video she then talks about like her disorder and talks about what it's like having a non-human altar, which apparently is real. And funnily enough, on the exact same day our video went up, she actually happened to make her big comeback to YouTube after disappearing for almost a year. I promise we didn't plan that. And if I'm not mistaken, might have actually been one of her longest breaks. And now, well, she's back. There's even more to discuss though, as she's recently made some new claims to her DID narrative. I guess she had some time off to practice, which is where we come to one of our first major updates since her return, where she said that some of her altars have fused into twins. What? Don't believe me? Just watch.
First of all, where did we go? Why did we go on a break? If you weren't watching our YouTube shorts, you might have missed this. So back in August of 2023, we were dealing with a crime. A stalker managed to find our address. We still have no real idea how. Flew from another country and intended to get into our house and essentially turned up outside our door. And we've been dealing with the police in the criminal case since then. Obviously, that was quite re-traumatizing given our past and our history, which we're not going into, but unfortunately the feeling of being watched or filmed, stalked, a lot of watching and being on camera and stuff like that all became even more triggering than it already was before. Essentially, an altar was starting to form from the fusion of Kaya and Mara. That altar, that still wasn't completely themselves yet because the fusion was still happening, split because of the new trauma and resulted in 2 new altars, and we weren't entirely sure what was going on. Those altars and what was left of Kaya and Mara in both of them, because they were both mid-fusion when they split, continued to fuse, and they ended up being sort of almost the same person but not quite, with noticeable differences, but still almost the same person, and we're not entirely sure whether they're also fusing or not. Anyway, the situation is extremely complicated, but essentially what came out of it was 2 altars that are both from Mara and Kaya, who are twins. That is Soren and his sister. Soren is the only one who will be making videos for you. He's the more stable of the 2, and Soren is our current host. To make it super simple as we can, Kaya was fusing with Mara, new trauma happened, that altar, which would have been Soren, split, and there's 2 new altars. Soren is the new host, who came from Kaya and Mara.
After what feels like forever to her followers, well, finally, boys and girls, another season with fresh characters to round things out. Can't wait. Alright, sure. If this is a big hit Netflix series, I totally understand the hype. But as much as some of you might think otherwise, I just can't wrap my head around why anyone's acting like discovering new altars is some kind of big milestone. Although I'm not saying it's not important, because of course, it obviously is. But I gotta admit, I'm kind of taken back by this particular situation. You know, especially when you see how so many DID content creators these days just sort of magically introduce new altars out of nowhere like it's nothing, purely for the content without really giving any clear explanation of how it even happened. And what blows my mind the most, by far, is how they can just easily announce it in their videos with so much enthusiasm, which sure would be kind of cute, I guess, if they were revealing a new boyfriend or some kind of pet and not a disorder or even an illness. Who would come onto a YouTube video like very happy and announce they now have cancer? Oh, guys, chat, leave a poggers in the chat. I'm so happy. You know what I mean? It doesn't really make any sense. And I guess it almost feels like there's this unspoken expectation that everyone is just supposed to nod along and be like, wow, that's amazing, congrats.
Great question, thank you for asking. So it varies for system to system and altar to altar, but in my case, yes it is. So both Chloe's eyes and Nin's eyes were brown. Both Kyle's eyes and Nina's eyes were blue. I, as Kaya, have a mixture. I have sort of a blue-grey on the outsides of my eyes and brown in the middle. And I like to think that that's from taking from all 4, both sets of colours. That's not how it is for everyone in our system who's fused, and it's not how it is for every single system out there. But for me, yeah, that's how our brain visualised it, I guess.
It's certainly a weird and wacky world that we're living in. This is something I also kind of want to break down later in the video, like why having a huge number of altars seems to be turning into some sort of competition and why it's also becoming more normalized for people to brag about it. But for now, for those who might not fully understand how new altars or fusion works, it's actually a very complicated process. Who would have thought, hey guys? And definitely not something you would be telling your viewers about right away, as this happens when different parts of a person's psyche slowly integrates into one collective self, and it usually takes a lot of time and therapy for that to be achieved.
Key points about fusion in DID. Not immediate. Fusion is not a quick process and can take years of therapy to achieve, as it requires deep exploration and and processing of trauma associated with each alter. Requires therapeutic intervention. While fusion can sometimes happen spontaneously, it is usually facilitated through therapy where alters are guided to communicate, understand, and eventually integrate with each other.
And the first thing that would probably cross your mind if you were going through something like this isn't, oh, I should let everyone know on my YouTube channel. Think of the views. But probably something more along the lines of, oh fuck, what is happening to me? Because let's be real for a second, you're dealing with something so unfamiliar and confusing. Surely your first instinct wouldn't usually be to want to broadcast it immediately. I don't know, is that a weird wacky take? I don't think so. And rather to take a step back and try to make sense of it yourself first. Surely, right? Anyway, the biggest thing I want to get into right now, as this is the thing that really stood out to me the most, is just how Dissociated claimed her alters were in the process of merging when a new traumatic experience came into play. While she did mention something about a stalking incident, she didn't really expand on that. But for her sake of the argument, okay. Let's assume for now that it's true. So according to her, when a fan showed up uninvited at her home, that apparently triggered what she called a fusing splitting event, which in her case caused 2 new alters to appear. Basically, she got rid of the toxic ones in her system, including her demon alter, Mara, and replaced them with Sowen and their twins, Mike and Sally.
I'll be nice. Just let me... One of the questions that Kaya was going to answer is who's different in the system. I don't think that any of you know who I am. I know that Mara, that I was before, made a TikTok once, but I've fused since then. I fused in 2020. Shocker.
Me, Soren. So if you aren't familiar with me, I'm the current host of the Dissociated System, and I am the one most often making videos for me. I am a big personality. I'd say I have the biggest personality out of all the people I've been before, with the exception of perhaps Mara, because Mara had a big personality. But then again, so did Nina, but I feel like I'm louder than Nina was. Anyway, I'm definitely more confident in myself than any of the people I've been in the past. I'd say on par with, or perhaps more confident than Kyle, actually. And that's something I'm happy with. That's huge growth for us. That's positive for me and my system, and it means that I'm more able to protect myself and my system because I know who I am and nobody else can tell me who I am. I know what I stand for. We've always had strong morals, but my morals, I will not budge from them. If I know something is wrong and I know that I don't stand by something, I will not.
Every alter fusion and split is a reminder of every time we almost didn't survive. Yup, total BS from Dissociated. This is not how fusion works at all whatsoever, not even close. Also, fusion is not the death of an alter. Alters cannot die as they are all parts of one whole. The way fusion happens with Dissociated is always so random and dramatic, and doesn't seem to actually be from therapy and processing trauma. It's always used as an interesting thing to make a video about. This is one of the reasons I think Dissociated's DID is full BS. Gotta mix up my characters for a video. Everything's too stale now. Oh, I know. I'll say they fused. This does so much damage to the actual info on DID and the public perception of it. This makes systems afraid of fusion and healing. This is anti-recovery BS and should be taken down. This also frames DID as some daytime soap and increases the chances of teens faking it to be cool and people not taking it seriously.
Multiple merging, huh? What a groundbreaking phenomenon. Definitely something worth adding to the books. But after looking through some Reddit discussions where people have shared their own experiences with fusion and what they understand about DID, along with doing some research ourselves, what she's saying, well, it doesn't actually make any sense at all. Because fusion, by definition, is supposed to be about different parts coming together as one. I mean, that's kind of what the word fusion means, right? not breaking apart and creating even more, which is the complete opposite of what she's describing in her videos. Something that not only I have noticed, but of course, many of us have noticed.
Filming became a PTSD trigger for us. Is in their newly renovated / painted filming room in all the videos? That does not make any sense at all, my dear. Obviously, all that recording was exposure therapy because who needs legitimate treatment? Can alters fuse in DID? As you know, successful fusions can only occur after the dissociative defense barriers that serve to separate the alters have been significantly eroded by psychotherapy. This happens when the alters begin to accept each other and to develop a sense of mutual self-identification.
Complicated to get into. We've never had anything that difficult to understand happen in our system before. So your guess is as good as mine as to what the hell happened there, but essentially the way the brain was trying to process and heal things was interrupted, corrupted. New host is Soren. I'm Soren. I have Kem and Red with me as well, and Mike watching me very closely, but this is mostly Soren at the minute. Hi, nice to meet you.
And like I mentioned earlier, this entire recovery process, where the barriers between different members of plural system gradually fade away, only takes place after deep emotional work. So it doesn't just happen overnight, not in such an extreme way where new alters suddenly just pop out of thin air. And I think most importantly, it's not something that would usually happen as a direct response to trauma. That said, it's so unreal for someone to just say they've finally fused with such a short window, especially if the person isn't in intensive therapy.
Multiplicity and Plurality Wiki says, often mistakenly called integration, fusion is the recovery process in which the barriers between one or more members of the plural system are fully reduced. Her acting like fusion is a bad thing is only contributing negatively to her mental health. It's a sign of healing, as everyone in the comments has said. And I agree with everyone else. This misinformation is absolute bullshit, and she either needs to educate herself or stop being a mental health advocate. I once told someone about her and they asked if she's purposely trying to spread misinformation. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe. It's not as if they have taken down their old videos with the misinformation in them. They've addressed it, which does virtually nothing.
I also wanted to point out the fact that she said traumatic experience suddenly happened around August 2023. But just 6 to 8 months later, she's already introducing new alters into her system, which I don't know about you, but when you seriously think about how fusion is supposed to be a slow, carefully guided process that requires actual healing, a basic piece of information that, by the way, anyone can easily verify with a quick, simple Google search, well, it doesn't seem right. And this is why it's so difficult to take this new narrative of hers at face value. But wait, before any of you get mad or start leaving harsh comments, I just want to clarify that I'm definitely not claiming to be an expert. You don't have to be. Like I said, all of this information is just one simple Google search away. And look, I'm just someone who, like many others, have had serious doubts about what dissociative is sharing in her videos. Again, no one can say for certain that she is faking, but we're just pointing out things that seem questionable and honestly highly unlikely. And look, ultimately, it's up to all of you to decide. The conclusion is yours to make. The thing is, with as much influence as she has, probably more than any other TikToker I've ever featured here, Dissociated has become a big source of information about a pretty complex mental health disorder. So it's understandable to be a little bit curious and maybe even skeptical. Because let's be honest, if you are someone who takes her advice seriously and applies it to your own life, well, I think you should also ask yourself whether what information you're getting is 1, reliable, or 2, helpful, or if it's just adding more confusion to an already misunderstood disorder. And I'm not just referring to Dissociated, but literally anyone who creates similar content. Now, let's put this in to a test and see if the goal that Dissociated claims on her website actually matches what she portrays in most of her videos. If you go to her mission page, there's a section where it says this.
Dissociated speaks from authentic personal experience, being professionally diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder in early 2017. We combine this intimate lived experience with extensive knowledge and research to create scientifically supported, validating, and easily digestible content on a human level.
Okay, look guys, I won't lie. I could barely get through just one paragraph before cringing because, well, as we've seen, so many people follow her platform religiously. But once you actually start looking into the details, like the stuff she says about integration and fusion, well, it's crystal clear at this point that a lot of what she shares isn't exactly accurate. And there are some noticeable inconsistencies in her story that I would like to point out. If she were just some small TikToker fishing for attention, maybe that wouldn't be such a big deal. But the thing is, she's definitely not. She's not just this typical influencer that we often talk about on this channel. She's actually way more than that. She's built this massive platform because of her disorder, and whether people realize it or not, that also means there's a business side to all of this.
I'm a doctoral level clinical psychologist in the US who treats DID patients. Your videos are phenomenal. I frequently recommend them to my patients. I keep thinking you would be a wonderful therapist and noticed psychology textbooks behind you. Just the other day, I was able to realize that a patient has DID even though she did not endorse any symptoms of it other than conversing with other parts. I knew to ask about that because of your description of being asked about your inner dialogue during your hospital intake. Thank you. You are an inspiration to many. Dr. Rochelle Gredvig.
Still, on her website, you'll also see a bunch of testimonials from different people, and even some professionals, who for some reason seem to be looking up her content. This one doctor, for example, has been recommending Dissociated's videos to her patients to help them learn more about DID. But honestly, knowing the history of Dissociated and that she has been stealing trauma stories and personal experiences from others, well, that's definitely a big red flag.
We actually spoke to a friend in the legal profession about what we could do regarding this about a year ago. Unfortunately, stealing someone's trauma histories isn't a crime. Yes, she has profited from it via YouTube, but we don't have enough physical evidence to prove that she actually stole ours and several others SRA, RA, MC survivors' stories. The challenge was also that she is in a different country. The only people we feel sorry for are her parents, who have been painted as monsters that were either involved or completely neglected her during the so-called abuse.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Debunking DID, where we debunk the stigmas and inaccurate information that surround dissociative identity disorder. So this video is about whether or not DID is real, and I bet you can guess what I'm going to say, but don't worry, I'm going to try and not be too biased because everything I'm using is coming from recent scientific and medically accepted studies that show beyond any reasonable doubt that dissociative identity disorder is real and its physical effects on the body and the mind. DID has been officially recognised and accepted as a psychological disorder.
Remember guys, we're still talking about an internet figure with no formal qualifications or training in mental health, and also someone who got expelled from university and then on top of that raised funds telling everyone it was for her to go back to her studies. But well, nothing ever came of that, and it seems like, well, she just pocketed the money instead of using it for her education. The money that people gave to her, she ended up just basically stealing the money. I mean, there's really no other way to sugarcoat it. So yeah, obviously she's definitely the perfect person to trust for mental health advice, right? Right, guys? Definitely. I mean, look, it just kind of baffles me how a professional who's spent years in the field can just casually tell their patients, oh, I've got this favorite YouTuber and you'll learn more from them than me, which honestly is just freaking insane because it opens the door for a lot of misinformation. I think honestly that goes with anything. If a doctor is telling you to watch their favorite YouTuber, what? For anything? That's insane. Instead of listening to them. And honestly, that could easily end up making things worse for people who already are struggling with this disorder. And not just those who are properly diagnosed with DID, but also potentially influencing young, impressionable kids or teens to fake having it, as we've clearly seen a rise in that in recent years. In fact, there are even more posts from many people sharing how everything started for them after discovering Dissociated's videos. Like this one who finally came forward and shared their own story about how at age 12, they started to get the idea of pretending to have a mental health disorder. They also openly admitted that it all started after, you guessed it, watching Dissociated. Who saw this coming?
Former faker here. Don't bash me, please. I've changed. I faked a multitude of disorders. DID, autism, PTSD, you name it. I probably faked it at some point. The reason I faked it was quite simple. I was depressed. I was lonely. I wanted to KMS. I felt like that faking disorders so I could get the attention I needed was the only thing I could do. I relate to the OP here. I'd like to say, and I'm deeply sorry to anyone here that may be POC or intersex, but I faked both of those as well. When I stopped faking, I felt like a horrible person. I was. Like the OP, I had all those outrageous things. I had 700 plus alters, emoji pronouns, 1,000 plus word trigger lists, and all that. I want you to know that a lot of the fakers may be seeking attention. They just want to be a part of a community. Of course, that's not justifying faking disorders, but just know that. It's wrong to fake disorders. If you felt like I did, it's better to get professional help. Trust me. I discovered DID when I was 12 in 2020 through Anthony Padilla's Dissociated video and binged all of their videos while I was depressed during lockdown. I was going through, like a lot of people, an incredibly difficult time of my life. Suicidal, isolated, getting back into self-harm after being clean for years. I was introduced to the concept of PTSD through Dissociated and started realizing that I had it. I've been diagnosed with nothing and refused to self-diagnose in any way. Trauma was resurfacing. Relatively shallow things like bullying and childhood emotional neglect. I followed Systems on Instagram and joined Discord to finally be able to talk to people again. The servers were filled with unstable teenagers. It absolutely sucked. We were each other's therapists. They were constantly telling me how they wanted to kill themselves, telling me about their self-harm, their eating disorders. There were a decent number of suicide scares and alleged attempts. One day, someone started saying they had DID. Yes, I joined Discord at 12. My parents knew but were not very invested or interested in what I was doing there. When my addiction reached its peak, they were extremely aware as I was pulling all-nighters to speak with my friends, would get drunk with my phone/laptop under my pillow, etc. They were concerned but never forced me to stop using Discord. I'm not sure what their reasoning was, but I think that since they had never encountered anything like my Discord addiction, they weren't sure what to do. Edit, to be clear, they did take measures to help me. I'm sure they felt like they did the best they could. I had a therapist for a few months, only she wasn't great, and I never felt like I could open up to her. I had my laptop/phone taken away a few times, but it didn't help much because I'm pretty sure I was experiencing what could be described as mental withdrawal symptoms.
Look, even though we often joke about people like this and we often can't stand them, especially those who are just doing it for clout, it's still hard to ignore the harm it causes. And the person sharing their experiences here wasn't just looking for attention, because they were actually extremely vulnerable here. at that time. As they said, they were depressed, and that led them to get drawn into this dangerous trend. Sadly, though, social media has become a key contributor to mental health issues in our society, and this situation is just clear proof of that. This kid probably also got caught up in this because they were looking for love and acceptance, something they might not have found in real life relationships. And by labeling themselves with this disorder, they thought they'd finally be understood. And anyone who challenges that would easily be seen as insensitive or, my favorite word, an ableist. So telling everyone that you are suffering from DID became a very powerful tool, as it gave them a way to gain sympathy and validation from others. And given that this post was from about 2 years ago, I'm willing to bet more teenagers are still falling into the same trap, especially since Dissociated hasn't changed her perspective and continues to suggest that people should bring up any signs of DID they think that they have to their therapist and expect them to diagnose it, which really isn't how things should work. Now,
Sergio Costa update for you. He has submitted his appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. This is over the outcome of the intellectual property hearing back in 2022. On Twitter, he said that he'd hired a lawyer who was a leading and foremost a specialist in human rights law. He's actually hired a local Portuguese lawyer who specialises in gender and gender transition law, and he specialises in taking those cases to the European Court of Human Rights, as well as real estate law. So not quite what Costa tried to imply in his tweets, but he said that he will refuse to comply with any outcomes or orders made by the UK court or UK judges. So when we do win the quantum proceedings and hopefully get some damages, he says he's going to refuse to comply. It means we'll need to go to Portugal. So please keep sharing and donating to our fundraiser.
moving on to something else. You've probably also been wondering what happened to that case she filed against Sergio Costa, a guy she used to work with on her videos a few years ago.
At first it was fun, then scary, then fun again, then spooky, but in a fun way.
Well, from what I've gathered, the case is still ongoing, with the latest update being that his appeal got accepted, meaning it's just an endless cycle of back and forth with no resolution in sight. Some, however, are saying that Dissociated is intentionally prolonging it. Others, however, point the finger at Sergio. But what seems clear to us here, though, is that both of them are just relying on other people's money to keep this thing going. But most of all, for Dissociated, because every new upload since this dispute started has just been another request for donations to fund her legal fights, which is honestly kind of embarrassing when you consider how she got herself into this mess in the first place. And now it seems like she's treating her followers like an ATM, expecting them to pay for her court battles as if they owe her something.
Some of you might be saying, Soren, what is happening with the Sergio Costa legal case? We've been donating to your Crown Justice fundraiser to help you get your justice against this man who tried to ruin our life. If you don't know what that's about, we have a video called What Happened to Dissociated. We actually have a whole playlist called What Happened to Dissociated that goes over what this man did to us and how they tried to destroy our channel, everything that we've created, and our life, essentially. By you guys donating to that Crowd Justice fundraiser, we are raising money to be able to continue to fight him in court, because he will not give up, and it has been going on for 4 years. 4 years since the first legal letters were exchanged. 4 years, my dude. If you would like to support us, please consider donating to our Crowd Justice fundraiser, which you can find up here and in the description box below. It is crowdjustice.com/case/dissociated. And if you cannot donate, please do not feel like you have to. Don't feel forced to. Don't feel pressured to. We love you just the same, regardless of whether you do or don't. But if you would still like to help, please share that link. It goes a long way. Or even sharing the playlist of, what did he do? Why might you consider helping us out if you can find it in the goodness of your heart to do so. That is just as appreciated by us and does make a huge difference. Use your voice as and how you want to, but we appreciate whatever you choose to do for us. And if you would like to donate so that we can afford our legal help, we use Crowd Justice, which takes the money that you donate and sends it straight to our lawyers. It bypasses us completely. We're not allowed to touch it, doesn't come into our bank account, we can't use it, and it can only be used by our lawyers for this case against Sergio Costa. That is how the Crowd Justice platform works. It's only for fundraising legal cases. And if you would like to donate or share the link, that would be so helpful for us. Thank you so much. And that is at www.crowdjustice.com/case/dissociated.
Would probably beg to argue that there's another TikToker out there who people actually hate even more. We've done a deep dive on them, and if you've never heard of this story, it's generally an insane one, where this TikToker faked having Tourette's until her family themselves actually called her out for it. If you're interested in that, click here or link in the description.